Hi, welcome to the Athens Film Festival 2025 Creator Interviews. Today I'm here with Clayton Horwitz, director of Don't Forget You Are a Boy, showing this at the festival this August. Clayton, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much for being here talking. I mean, let's just get right into it, honestly. What a what a short you've made.
Oh yeah, it's something, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
It's very much a unique premise. I have to ask, where did this idea come from? Was it based on something overheard at a party, a nightmare, a deeply cursed group chat? Where did this come from?
It really came, so the three leads of the short were like my three former roommates. So we all used to live together. And I had always envisioned like making something that would fit all three of them, I really, because like we were so close and I knew that we have so much chemistry together as like a director than the three actors. I knew that there was like I know all of their strengths, I know all their weaknesses, and I was just always kind of going back and forth to figure out what I could put together that would like showcase their strengths without, being a super high budget. And I'm a big fan of the theatrical works that really they kind of feel more like a stage play where you can really just like let the actors run around and do what they want. So I never like necessarily set out to tell this story at the beginning, but once I kind of found a premise that like I could picture these three guys running around and just wrecking havoc, I knew that there was just so much funny material that you could work with in here. So I think it was just really me wanting to showcase my friends on the most insane light as possible because they trust me as well. So I was like, how far can I push this, knowing that they believe in me and that I so like when you have that mutual trust, I'm like, what can I get them to do? And they really didn't say no to anything.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness. Well, with that natural chemistry, was this like very sticking to the script, or did we improvise at all, knowing each other?
I would say that pretty much all of it was scripted in terms of like what you see in the final product. Although we did rehearse it for like, at least like 3, 4 days in advance. So like from what it was on day one to what it was on our actual shooting date was definitely different. Like over the course of that time, we did a lot of, light improvising in terms of some of the dialogue, but also like the blocking and the movements and certain lines and like when exactly what they were delivered and in what inflection they were delivered. But I'd say so there was some improvisation within that whole process,
Right.
but by the time we were like really getting down to it, we pretty much had everything fully composed the way that we had all collectively landed on together.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, no, it definitely has some very chaotic energy that I would be like, I wouldn't blame you if you did improvise it and it'd be really sharp.
Yeah, I like to give credit to the cast that that's how strong they are and that's how much chemistry they have is that they're able to create that improvisational just like zany off the wall feeling because that's just how comfortable they are with each other that they don't have to like improvise to create something like that. They can like choose to do it on their own, which is super impressive. I could not have done it without them.
Amazing. It's nice to hear people talk so highly of their cast and crew here too. But speaking of the actual content in the film that we're all, having you act in, the premise is inherently sexual, but the film isn't just about sex. It's about negotiation, masculinity, and a zany power struggle. Did you initially set out to make a sex comedy or a satire of one? Yeah, what was the kind of direction you went in once you had a prompt, I guess?
Okay, first of all, great questions. It's cool. It's refreshing to see that that you really did sit down and watch all this and
Oh
go through
gosh.
it. Because I've done some other festivals where they kind of ask the same, like the same 10 questions to everybody,
Okay.
which is cool too, because it still lets people talk. But I appreciate that you guys actually went out and watched a little bit.
That's so great to hear. No, we love film. Why wouldn't we watch it?
Of course, no, yeah, I agree. I mean, that is the mentality that you should have going
Yeah.
into it. But yeah, I think I set out not to kind of make a satire of the sex comedy based on just like the toxic masculinity of like kids in their like early 20s. I wanted to kind of take a step out, like, in terms of like the age range and sex comedies. I feel like there's the high school sex comedy of like high schoolers running around like trying to get laid, and then there's like the mid to late 20s sex comedy of like I'm tired of being single, like I'm gonna run around New York City and find a wife. But there's kind of not, there never really seemed to be like a middle ground that all
Mm.
other than, like the high school slash college age. There was just really nothing there that I had to like look back on. And I feel like that's like the most confusing time to like be dealing with those types of hormones, because you are old enough that you understand what's happening, but young enough that you're not willing to do the right thing. And it just leads to a lot of, especially just based off of like my own experiences when I was in college, just people would just getting themselves into really just like messy, unnecessary situations, all just trying to woo a partner. And I just really wanted to represent that on screen because I feel like we hadn't seen that. I feel like that's not always the top age group to highlight in these types of things. So I really wanted to kind of explore just like the really, accidentally nasty tendencies that kind of sits in the back of like young men's head as they're trying to figure out and to like work through how they really feel about themselves and each other and like
Mm.
what they set out to find in a partner.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I think, yeah, the presence of sex is, very strong at that age group and also even in film, but it's usually taken in, very serious or, dark kind of layer at a lot of times. So I think that was a really nice like subversion, I think too. Also just like there were some genuine moments of like true comedy where it's like I forget that like that's even what we're fighting about.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of ridiculous layers to it, I'd like to think. Because I feel like that's how these situations would really play out. That's also the nice thing about really not using any cuts in this, except for like at a couple of specific points, is like, you kind of do have to sit in those moments, whether it's funny or whether it's sad or whether it's confusing. But like
Yeah.
that's how these things would play out. You can't just like have an idea on how to woo a girl and then you cut to the next day and now you're like working on this thing. But no, really, you're gonna have to sit there and kind of deal with those emotions head on. And
Yeah.
that's another thing we really set out to capture is, what the actual reality of these situations, which I think also captures just how ridiculous they are sometimes and how far people will go for things that they don't really need to.
Yeah, it felt almost like a Please Do Not Destroy skit on SNL with three guys and that one too. If you haven't seen those,
Yeah,
check them
yeah,
out.
yeah. Those are great. Those are so funny. I love those.
Absolutely. But back to the title itself, even, Don't Forget You Are a Boy. Honestly, when I was first watching this, I was like, wow, that's such a like poignant title. I'm like, I wonder if this is gonna be like a drama
Yeah,
about
like an
gender.
art house for
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
that's kind of what it, omits. It's very daring and almost like a warning. What does it mean in the context of this story and who's forgetting and what happens when they do?
That's a great question. I didn't really have a title going into this. Like when we shot it, when we put it together, when it was getting written, directed, I didn't necessarily have a title that I was set on because I was really more focused on, the themes and the messages and what I wanted to say, and I was trying not to get too caught up in the title. And then after that, so I'm also, as well as being a filmmaker, I'm also a working stand-up comedian. Right after we had finished production on the movie, I was doing some shows over in Europe. I forget the name of the museum. It was like a graffiti-based museum, and they had a whole section. It was "Don't Forget You Are a Blank," and they basically just had all these different figures. There were, different humans, animals, and life forms, and all these different things that were, portrayed in such a way where, in those moments that those like whatever in each picture there'd be something happening to someone or something. And in that moment, it seems like the biggest thing that's ever happened. It seems like the most stressful or the most hard to deal with or confusing or this and that to try to figure out. But then, you give it like one day and you realize that didn't matter at all. And that, it's very easy to get caught up in whatever is happening to, each of us individually and think that, oh, my life is over. Oh, this is going to be the biggest thing that ever happens to me, the smallest thing that ever happens to me, this and that. And as I was like actively searching for a title for the short, I had come across this art that just really had inspired me. And the original title, like the working title, was Three Boys, which I was like, I could do better than that. I'm like, I know there's something else out there. And the whole cast had told me that too. I was like, I know I can come up with something better, but I feel like you can't force the title sometimes. You just have to let it find you, and that's kind of what happened. So once I kind of put those two together and came up with "Don't Forget You Are a Boy," and also I figured, it sounds really smart. It gets people to click on it and think that it's that it's going to be a art house drama starring Adrian Brody or something, and I'm like, this sounds like it would rope people in, and I think it did. So that's kind of where that came from, and I think it worked.
Amen. I think so too. Absolutely. Like, I didn't think of it that way as like a humble, like, don't forget, you're just a guy. I feel like we
Yeah,
could
it's like
all,
don't forget, like this is not a thing to be yelling about and like losing a friendship over, but that is also, is a definitely a common thing that's happened to a lot of like 21-year-old boys. I'm sure in like a college dorm room or a college apartment, I'm sure this exact type of thing has happened and they thought it was the end of the world when then, 2 days later they're like, you know what? Don't know if this mattered or not, but whatever they did is it's already over.
wow. Well, what a like internationally traveling title you've got from Amsterdam then in that case. It really works. But
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
speaking of like, you know,
Yeah, it's
unex
fun to pull inspiration like that from other places.
but yeah, speaking of like, unexpected poignancy, this definitely could have been a pure dick joke territory, and that's something I'm always aware of as a woman. But this script was able to sneak in vulnerability, jealousy, even identity crisis. How did you balance being genuinely funny without while saying something, sorry, a little deeper about male friendships and insecurity?
Well, I think at the core of it is really about male insecurity and just the confusion of hormones within young men. So I think that was kind of like the first building block to lay everything else upon. So then it's like, every other joke, every other insults or every other like weird action that's thrown that way. It's all, coming from a very vulnerable and insecure place of like, oh, I don't want to look dumb. How do I make my friend look dumb instead? How do I get the attention off of me? And how do I push it back onto them? So I feel like at the heart of it, um, it was really never meant to, even though there obviously is a lot of dick jokes and a lot of crass humor, I feel like the themes and the concepts of it could have been done the same way without any of that. So I think, then taking the chemistry between my cast and then my work in comedy, I feel like we were able to then, take the thematic layers that are, I think, most important to the film and then layer a bunch of different jokes and comedy and, physical humor and all that stuff on top of it without having that be like that's all it is. It's like I think that's what separates a film from like a comedy sketch.
Right.
Is like a comedy sketch is funny and it's entertaining and it's made to make you laugh, but it's like those are the only blocks that there are there.
Mhm.
Within a film, you need a much more richly layered, foundation to really get a message across. So I think it was really like the jokes, as important as they are to making an entertaining watch, I don't think that was like the first thing that was considered.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, especially I think as a comedian in your background there too, it's interesting that each character does feel kind of like a type, but also like a real person. And so it is deeper than a skit in that sense. How do you go about writing or casting? Obviously, you've had your friends there to keep them from becoming total caricatures. And
Yeah.
how do you balance leaning into that or not?
Well, I think in that way I kind of get to do both, where like it helps that like I'm writing for people that I already am aware of. So like the three lead guys in the movie, I'm already very close with them, and these characters are not based on them in any way. Like if you met them all in person, you'd be shocked to realize how like normal and respectful they are based on how crazy they go in the short. But I think it was like, I already know who they are. I know what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. So it was like I could kind of pick and choose
Mhm.
parts of their personality to then expand into characters that I kind of wanted to explore. And then also kind of finding three characters that are, kind of a triangle of like being at different, like having slightly different feelings about wanting the same thing. So I
Mhm.
feel like I got to kind of take the most entertaining abilities of my cast members and then kind of pit them against each other, um, to where none of them are the same person, even though they all want the same thing and they all have a lot of similarities, but you can always kind of tilt it a little to the side, and give them all different motivations and write the characters to have different reasons for like why they're doing what they're doing. So it was
Mm.
definitely an interesting tightrope to walk doing that, I think, because you could also just let them play themselves and run around and all that stuff, but then it's a little more loose on like what are you trying to say, like what are you trying to get across when the movie's over, like what ideals are people going to remember by. So it's definitely I like to think that if people can't tell, like if it feels improvised or if it feels unscripted, then I think we did our jobs about as good as we could.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that natural chemistry was something I was going to ask about since, these are people there's probably an instinct to fall into your natural pattern with them. How do you kind of redirect it while kind of keeping that same energy, though?
Well, I think first, I think it's, as much as I also, entrust them to do whatever they think is right and like, jump to whatever different acting ideas they have. I think in reverse, they also have that same relationship with me where, I'm able to give them, quality notes that might have been not what they had envisioned at first in their head. I
Mm.
think, because we're so close in that same way, I guess it's just one versus three and then three versus one, where, I can give them a lot of different notes or be like, hey, let's try this way, or how about you guys do this against him in this way? And I think they're very, very good at taking direction. And I also think they're very passionate about acting the same way that I am about writing and directing. And I think we all know that. They're like, even though we don't all have the same exact skill sets, we all are equally as passionate on what we want to do and what we wanted to accomplish with this movie. Even though they're my close friends and we're all have a great working relationship, at the same time, they also know that when it comes down to it, I'm looking at it through the camera and, they're playing the character. So sometimes there's things that I can see that they can't see. So I think they end up just having to trust my judgment, or we can talk about it and kind of figure out like where that line is. It also helps that we did have to rehearse this for a few days beforehand because it's all in one take. So it did, like, by the time we were shooting, we had kind of worked out a lot of that.
Mm.
And but also that's, I think also the power of rehearsal is that it gave us a couple days to like work through every confusing thing that we were all running into. So by the time we were ready to shoot, everyone was on the same page, and I think that just made it go really smooth.
Excellent. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love rehearsal, absolutely. Moving away from
Yeah, it's
the
underrated. People forget about that.
Oh my God. No, I acted in maybe one thing and we didn't rehearse it a single time and I felt it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
felt
it's
that I was
tough
like,
to with
"Oh
rehearsals
my
sometimes. When you're shooting, it depends on what you're shooting. If you're have a bunch of different locations and a bunch of different cast members, and you're running around, and your productions are these huge shoots, it's a little harder to work it in. But with this, it's like all we had was time, really, because we could do a bunch of rehearsal for free, with no budget, no nothing. It's just us in a room, walking around and working on it. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we got lucky with that.
Well, I love to hear a director passionate about rehearsals. Absolutely. Moving away from, cast and crew to the audience here, what's kind of the feeling you want people to have when the credits roll? What do you hope for their reaction? Or what's the reaction you also don't want when people see this?
Yeah, I'd like to. I think, the most successful films are the ones that make audiences feel strong emotion. Whether that emotion is definitely dependent on what the movie is, whether it's laughter or sadness or, if you're scared or if you're hopeful or this and that, regardless of what genre you're diving into, I feel like the most important thing is to make people feel the emotion that you're shooting for. So ideally, we can keep people laughing from like the first moment of the short, right when it opens on them, to the entire way through. But then it'll end, and you can be like, "Oh wow, I was laughing all the way through, but I actually still feel like I learned something, or that I gained a new ideology on this subject." I feel like I would almost like it to be funny enough that you forget that you could actually still pick up some themes from it. And then it ended, and you're like, "Oh wow, a lot did happen in that." But I do understand a little more about these people and how they ended up in this scenario. Ideally, it's a lot of emotion all the way through. I guess laughter would be
Yeah.
the top one, no.
Some laughter, some emotional, creative deception. Try to get you to
Yes,
some themes. Excellent.
exactly. A little bit of everything in there.
That's a good storyteller.
I do what I can, you know.
Absolutely. Well, I asked this question to everyone. I think it's a fun question. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's like the letterboxed four kind of trend going around where we ask like what your top four are. But I'm going to twist it up a bit and ask what are four movies that your projects you recommend people watch leading up to the festival to kind of get a taste for it, or after if they're watching this and want more?
Oh, okay. I gotta say, I mean, my this is like my personal favorite has got to be Birdman. I think that is it definitely inspired this a lot. I'd have to put that up at the top from like the one take to the comedy drama flipping back and forth. I think that one definitely was a big inspiration for us for sure. So I guess you go from Birdman to then something that's like fully on the comedy side, like Super Bad, which
Mm,
is they're a little younger, but I feel like the same energy of the horny immature guys who like don't understand how to process their emotions and like be good friends. And I think those two were definitely some of the first ones. Another one I really was inspired by that I saw recently was called A Different Man. It was with Sebastian Stan and
oh,
Adam Pearson that came out semi recently. I think is also another one that we pulled a lot from. It was just like men who don't know how to grasp their emotions and kind of take it out on the world around them. But that
yeah.
movie also, had its really great dramatic moments and its really funny moments. Um, that but then it kind of all blends together in a way that you're not. It doesn't feel like a jarring tonal shift.
Mm,
To balance, that comedy, that drama hand in hand instead of kind of doing one and then switching and doing the other.
yeah.
So I'd say that would be three. What was probably the fourth one, if I had to do a fourth, would be Shiva Baby, I think, with Rachel Sennett. It was another one that was like, which was, we took inspiration from because of just how chaotic it was, where like you did not get a moment to, that movie, I had to like turn it off halfway through because like I was getting anxious. And then
Oh,
I woke up the next day and I was like, but I need to finish it because that's how good it was. And that's kind of, I think that was another one where it's just like there's so much happening and you cannot catch a break, and it's just so ridiculous and hormonal, and you just don't know what's going on. So I'd say if we got to go for four, those are the four.
amazing. Actually, now that you mentioned Rachel Sennett, I think that this is probably like a guy's version of Bottoms in some ways. Like the way that the girls talk about sex in that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh gosh, well, that's so fun. Well, thank you so much for being here and talking with me today. Can you tell anyone here what you're working on next, where to find you? Will it involve more emotional spirals disguised as sex jokes in your future projects? Let us know.
There's always something coming. You never know. Yeah, I'm working on so you can find me on Instagram at Clayton on Set. That's where you see all of my stand-up comedy stuff. So I'm going on tour starting in September. So I'll be back on the road. I'll be all over the US and Europe a little bit. So that'll be just 100% jokes and no dramatic undertones. That'll be just comedy. So that'll be fun. But yeah, this short is going around the circuit, so we're kind of putting together some treatments for our next couple of projects. Writing a feature right now for my good buddy Matthew Arkham to direct. He's directed a couple really good shorts over the past couple of years, so I'm excited to lock in on him with that. I really want to do another short too. I really want to get another project off the ground. I guess I have a couple ideas, but it's really more just debating on to lean into the comedy or to lean into the drama or like which direction to go. But yeah, I'm always working on stuff. I always think there's stories to be told and emotions to be felt. So while that's
Amen.
still true, I'm going to be out here doing something. So find me online at Clayton on Set and you'll see what I'm up to.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Well, amen to that. We're excited to see what you do. Will we see you at the festival?
I hope so. I'm working on it right now. I'm a little poor, but I'm trying to see if I can make it for at least the weekend to see it on the Saturday screening. So I'm working on that right now. Fingers crossed I should be there.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to having it show here at the festival. It'll be showing this August from the 14th through 17th. The festival's taking place, and tickets are on sale now at athensfilm.com. And we'll have the people tagged to see your Instagram after we post this.
Wonderful. Yeah, go buy your tickets. Get them right now. Get them ASAP.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today. And have a great rest of your night.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Bye.